Hello and welcome to the Situation Report today. This is the show where we do our very best to give you the information and perspectives you need to navigate an ever-changing culture. My name is Jeremy Stolniker. I am your host. And today I have the opportunity to share with you a conversation that I had with Army veteran, father, husband, and author Sean Russell. Sean has recently published a novel, really interesting perspective on life and on what it would look like if we could live life without consequences, using much of his background in the United States military, coupled with his understanding of Christianity, and in particular, his study of Greek and New Testament Greek. He brings these pieces together to tell a story and to communicate an idea to help us to understand what life would look like if we lived it without consideration for consequences, understanding that what we do impacts not only us, but those around us. Great conversation, and I trust that you will appreciate and enjoy this conversation and then go get his book. Now, my conversation with Sean Russell. Sean Russell, thanks for joining. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Want to get to your book and kind of the motivation and talk about that for a while. But your story that leads into that, right? You probably don't have the background of a normal novel writer, novel author, author of a novel, whatever you call someone who writes a novel. You probably don't have the normal background for that. And I think it's interesting. Like, I've written not a novel, but the books I've written, they're all my background and where I've come from and what I've learned and who I am influences all of that. And I would imagine it's the same even in works of fiction. So I want to get there, but we need to understand your background. So talk about where you came from, where you were raised, your journey of faith, and then really interested in your military service.
So I was born in Hayward, California. It's in the East Bay area.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Modesto, which, as we were talking before the show, USA Today loves to call the worst city in America to live in.
What do they know? What do they know?
Yeah.
There are a lot of bad cities.
Yeah. We beat Compton. I think that was number 2. So.
That's good. That's good.
So that was childhood, the worst city in America to live in. It wasn't bad though.
Yeah.
And when I was in 7th grade, I finally stepped foot into a church. So I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My dad was baptized Catholic, but he wasn't practicing Catholic.
Yeah, well.
And so he would always tell us that his greatest gift to us was that he didn't force that on us, which is kind of true and kind of not true. I mean, I would have loved for him to show us the faith, but I'm glad I'm not a Catholic. So there's that.
Right.
So he when I started going to church, he was very like, you can go whenever you want, just don't bring it home. That was like his big thing.
Who took you to church?
Yeah, there was a family that lived across the street from us. My best friend at the time, his name was Alex Dillon. His dad was a pastor. I'm not sure if he still is, but he was a pastor at the time. He pastored at multiple churches. And so on Sunday, it was a whole circuit that they would run around the valley to do different churches. And so church was an all-day thing. And so my excuse for probably like 2 years was, well, I can't spend all Sunday with you guys.
Yeah, right.
So, which was just an excuse. I mean, obviously I could. I didn't have anything else going on, so... the dad eventually did not have the job at the other church, and so it was only the one church. There wasn't like any fallout or anything. It was just however that worked out. And so they had a revival meeting. There was a man there named Danny Daniels. He was a Vietnam vet. Do you know
that name is really familiar, but I'm not sure.
California,
I feel like I have run into him.
He's a great guy. He should come on the show sometime. But he was the guy. He came out, preached a straightforward gospel message. He was a Marine and he said that he kind of preached like a Marine. Like, he was just very, here's the facts, here you go,
Right.
boom, boom, boom.
Right.
And I was just, man, it was like the lights turned on. We went a second night, and I did everybody's favorite, did the altar call.
Right.
With probably the first, second, and fourth stanzas of Just As I Am and all that.
Right.
And I was just gung-ho from the beginning. I never looked back. There was really no falling out period or anything like that. It was just, I'm all in, and very grateful for that.
Yeah.
During that time, this is what kind of led to going to CBU. There were a lot of pastors, like retired pastors there, and they really encouraged me to go into ministry. They said, man, I can just see it, like, you should do this. And I felt that I should do it. And so I really based my whole life on that at a very, very young age. I think I was probably 13-ish, something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I went to CBU for a year, had the most pitiful first year there, didn't do well at all. And then I ran out of money, and so I joined the Army.
Yeah.
After the Army, it's always
I think I've heard this story before.
Came back and just knocked it out of the park. Graduated magna cum laude. So the Army did something right for me, I guess. And
sometimes we have to grow up a little bit, I think, before we can get serious about education and things like that. So what was that transition like, coming out of college, going into the Army? Why the Army? Why not finding a job somewhere, going back home, or whatever?
That's a great question. So I tried to get a job at McDonald's. So this is 2009.
Yeah.
This is peak low point for a lot of people, I think. What was it? Another city in the valley. I think it was Stockton. Stockton, California, which is also in the 209 area code.
Yeah.
Was the hardest hit by that housing crisis. So that area was just really bad. Couldn't get a job at McDonald's. That McDonald's was the last straw where I said, what? If I can't do McDonald's, I'm joining the Army. Yeah. They really wanted me to go Air Force, but I had this mentality at the time where I was like, I don't want to get out and say I was an airman. Yeah. I had this machismo. I want to be a soldier.
Yeah, right. Well, you should have looked at the Marine Corps, but that's okay. Everyone has their shortcomings. So,
sure.
2009, there was a lot going on, obviously, in Afghanistan, Iraq, but Afghanistan, I think, is where you served.
Afghanistan.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit, because I have to believe that influenced even the way you have written and, kind of life post-military.
Yeah. So, Afghanistan, we went there I got there March of 2011 and left January of 2012.
Yeah. Wow.
That's where I met my wife. She was in the same platoon as me.
Wow.
It's a new Army. So
yeah, sure.
That's how it is. We were on the same convoy. We were in the same truck at one point. I was a gunner and she was a driver. That's what she was, at 88 Mike, which is a motor T for the Army. Yeah. I was a fueler, but I also was a gunner like half the time. So I think they said we did like 200 convoys.
Wow.
So it seemed like it was every other day we were on the road. And those convoys really did. There's a large part of the book that is based on those convoys. So a lot of the people that I met in the Army, there's a lot of characters in the military.
Yeah, right.
And they make for good characters in novels.
Yeah, right.
It was probably more good than bad. I don't want to make it out to be like it was this really negative experience. There were a couple of things that were pretty wild.
Yeah.
I was a TC one time, so I'm in the passenger seat of a Hemet, which is a 2,500 gallon tanker full of fuel.
Yeah, wow.
And driver almost drove us off the side of a mountain, because that's kind of what Afghanistan is, it's all mountains. And we got like sideways one way and we got sideways the other way, and then we just stopped at the bottom of the hill, and it was okay. But during that time, I like put my hand up and I had my like radio, and I was like ready to say, hey, this is the fueler, we're going over.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it was very much like a sinners in the hands of an angry God type thing. If you've ever read that, highly recommend.
Yeah.
I had read it previous to that, and so like I remember just thinking, it was like, whoa, like I'm ready. It was weird, kind of like I'm ready to go over this cliff. And I'm still kind of confused by that thought. But I mean, there's a lot of assurance in Christ that, you know, if I go over, then I'm safe on the other side.
Sure. Hey, Situation Report, Jeremy Stolniker here. We've all heard about DC politicians and their incredibly well-timed stock trades. Well, according to veteran trader Ross Givens with Traders Agency, it's all true. These politicians have made absolute fortunes for themselves trading stocks. Ross has revealed there's a largely unknown legal loophole that allows regular people, patriots like you and me, to see when these elite insiders are buying up stocks and how to follow their lead to incredible profit opportunities. Now, Ross has been doing this for a long time. He's a former vice president of investment management at JP Morgan Chase. He's been trading stocks for almost 20 years and teaching clients how to trade their own money for almost a decade. And we've just been blown away by everything Ross has revealed, including exactly what this trading loophole is and how it works, how he's learned from these insiders for nearly a decade, and how the stock picks have gained 88% in 7 days, 234% in 8 weeks, and even 1,787% in 2 years. Go to theinsidertrades.com to start following these insiders yourself and get a free stock pick of one of the hottest symbols that is seeing huge insider buying right now. That website is theinsidertrades.com to see when these political insiders are buying stocks and get your free stock pick. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Yeah, it's having your eternity settled instead of being the person who wonders what happens next and being fearful because of the uncertainty. It's always interesting when you talk to someone. You know, I was in the Marine Corps, I was in Iraq, and being there as a Christian and being there as someone who, you know, has those assurances and has those things nailed down it's a different experience than for someone who doesn't and someone who's trying to figure it out. So coming back home from that, what was that transition like for you? Did you get out of the Army and go into, you know, civilian employments, or what did that transition look like?
So I went straight into college.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe not straight into college. There was like a gap where I really, I don't know, like I was just kind of like mentally drifting. It was weird coming back home.
Yeah.
It didn't, I think that I kind of had this idea where time would stop and then I would go away for 4 years and then I would come back.
Yeah.
And we could all just start where I left. But like people lived 4 years of life.
They moved on. Right. Yeah, they moved on.
And I mean, it was just, you come back and it's kind of like, you know, maybe like you have one day where people throw a barbecue and they acknowledge you, but then it's like, all right, we're going, you know, we got the rest of our lives to go live and try to catch up.
Yeah. They go back to work and doing all the things they were doing before. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So it was 2013. I know you're a baseball fan, so I'm a big A's fan.
Yeah.
2013 was a good year for the A's, and so I was just like kind of glued to my TV. Went to like 20 games that year.
Yeah.
Just prodigal living, not really accomplishing anything.
Yeah.
But then the school year started, and it was like, all right, I can do this.
Yeah.
And I think that was a harder transition than just straight getting out. Because there's kind of that Billy Madison effect
Yeah.
where
Yeah. It's real.
everyone
It's real. Yep.
everyone who uses the GI Bill is at least 4 years older than people
Yeah.
starting like from 18.
Yeah.
And so I was like the only married guy in the pastoral ministry program. So they're asking me questions about married life that we probably don't want to talk about on the show. But yeah, like a lot of, dude, give me advice. Like, how do I marry someone? Like, okay.
Yeah, I had gone to college before going in the Marine Corps, and then I had my time in the Marine Corps. Then I got out and went back to school. So, weird thing. I was married, I had kids, and sitting in a classroom with 19-year-old young people. Yeah, it's a different world for sure. When you went to college, at some point you decided to write this novel, and again, I always find it interesting when kind of worlds come together, right? So it's a novel, it's fiction, but it's fiction that you use as an allegory to communicate truth and to bring different parts of your life together. So I know that on this side of it, but what motivated you to sit down and say, I'm going to write a 75,000 word book?
Yeah. So I had a conversation while I was at CBU with a friend. Ironically, I really hated taking English.
Yes, all good authors hated English class.
Yeah. But I had one more to go, and you do the first two that are like the set English classes, and the third one you can kind of do like elective type English. And my buddy convinced me to do one called Major Christian Authors, which focused on the writings of C.S. Lewis and Tolkien.
Yeah.
And we were in that class and we were talking a lot about writing, and like I had read Lord of the Rings for the first time that semester, and some C.S. Lewis stuff I'd never read before, and I was just kind of like, you know what, like I think I could do this. And we were at this cafe at CBU called Wanda's, and we were in line waiting for food, and I don't remember why we brought this up, but I was like, hey man, I got this idea for a story. And I kind of fleshed out the very like basic, like it's a time travel idea. The idea is that you can create new timelines that they don't go away, but you can revisit them whenever you want. So you can just like relive a moment, or you can take that moment in a new direction and live a different kind of life that way. And I just brought that up because I've always been a big Back to the Future fan.
Yeah, so, right.
Like time travel is an interesting concept to me, but I was like, well, what if there's not really like consequences? What if living in your own past doesn't like ruin everything? You can just go relive it and then go back to your regular life whenever you want. And he was like, "Did you write down any of this?" And I was like, "No, I couldn't do that." And he's like, "No, you should give it a shot." And I kind of remembered that when, my wife and I moved to Texas after I graduated, and I was here and I was working security downtown, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to dedicate like an hour every morning to writing this book.
Yeah.
And so that's how I started writing it. There's actually a big gap. I wrote a big portion of it, and then my goal at the time was to finish it before our firstborn was born. But we had a miscarriage. And so I just went into depression mode and didn't care. And I was, that whole kind of thing. It happens.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then we had a daughter. And then when my wife was pregnant again, I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually finish it this time before our second is born. And so I was able to actually do that. And I cranked it out like nothing before. It was pretty ridiculous, some of the numbers that came out.
Yeah.
Like 5,000 words in one sitting.
Yeah, wow.
In like an hour, maybe hour and a half, something like that. And so it, like when I finished it, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I actually finished it. Like, because my wife she went from I don't think you're ever going to finish this, to, yeah, you wrote 75,000 words, but are any of them good?
Right. Right.
So,
Right. Our wives are ever the encouragers.
yeah, of course.
When you got the idea, the concept was there, did you have a goal in mind? I want to, leverage this to communicate some truth to the reader, or was it just I'm going to
Yeah.
start and see where it ends up?
Yeah. Well, it was definitely a discovery writing process. So as opposed to like outlining every single thing, a lot of the filler was me sitting in the car for an hour and a half drive with no radio on or anything, and just, this has to be the next thing that happens. Okay, boom, 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 and then as soon as I get home, then I would write it down.
Yeah.
But the major theme of the book comes from, while I was at CBU, I studied Greek with Dr. Richard Mobley, who I don't know if he's retired yet, but he's got to be getting close. And man, I just fell in love with the Greek language. So I took Greek before the Army, and then there was a moment I remember in Afghanistan where I was just sitting on a bunk and thinking, man, I really wish I was in Dr. Mobley's Greek class again.
Oh, wow.
Like that's where my head was at. And when I got back, I made sure my schedule worked out to where I took Greek with him and not another professor. And so he just really made me love the Greek language. And one of the things that I found while studying is that the English word will is mainly two different words in Greek. You have thelo and you have boule. And there's different endings for that and whatnot, but those are like the word families. And so that's where thelo comes from. It's a Greek word. It means like I wish, will, or want. And so that's what the ring represents. Thelo is also a main character. He's the one that, I guess I'll give some of the plot before I get into that. But so James Erickson, he's an Army veteran, of course, had to write about Army veteran.
Yeah, right, sure.
And he's a normal guy. Like, that's his big thing. He's just like an average guy. He's not really down in the dumps. He's not like living high on the hog. One of the examples I give is that all his uniforms are medium regular, which is something that's actually true about myself, that all my uniforms in the Army were medium regular.
Yeah.
So I always said I was the perfect Army standard soldier. But he's given this ring and he's given this opportunity, and he just kind of goes down these different what ifs in his life and kind of exercises his own will over, if I had truly free will, how would I live? That was kind of the theme there. And so that's where Othello comes from.
Yeah. And if there are no consequences, I can do whatever I want. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Boule is the will. It's kind of the like God's will in a speaking history into existence sense. So whatsoever the Lord pleases comes to pass. I don't think I quoted that. I think that's in the Westminster Catechism or something like that. But those two words being compared, you can get a lot of theological truth out of that. And I really want to show that in this book. One of my favorite places that you find that is in the gospel accounts of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he says, nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will, talking to the Father. And in Matthew and Mark, the account says, not as I will, being thelo, but as you. So there's not even a second word for will. In Luke, it says, not as I will, thelo, but as you will, boule. So it's different kinds of will in that sense. Yeah. So Jesus saying, not as I want, but as you have foreordained, as you have planned. And so there's a lot, especially in the end, that kind of shows, talk a lot about providence, about how everything happens for a reason. Yeah. That's kind of the adding a lot of creamer to the coffee version of saying Providence.
Yeah,
Everything
right.
happens for a
Right.
reason.
Right.
And that there really are consequences to the things that we do, even if the consequences are only to us. So, if you go and murder somebody, yeah, there's a consequence that somebody died, but there's also the consequence that you are now a murderer.
Right.
That has now hurt you.
Right.
And I really wanted to explore how living for yourself and nobody else can really just destroy a person. Even if they have all the money and all the women they want and all the everything that they want, that it's destroying you ultimately. Sin is corrupting you.
Yeah. When you, or as you're writing this, did you learn anything, maybe about yourself, or refine any ideas or thoughts or philosophies that you had prior to going into it, or come to different conclusions maybe about maybe free will or something else? It seems, for me at least, when I'm writing, I have an idea of where I'm going, but just the process of thinking through it and outlining it and writing it down and going back and thinking about it in the editing, it changes sometimes how I look at things. Did you have that happen to you as you were walking through this?
There were a number of really important things. So, like, when I started writing it, I didn't have any kids, but the main character had kids. But then when I finished it, I had 2 kids.
Yeah.
And so kind of that, having your own kids actually changes how you feel
for sure.
about kids. And
for sure.
And then another one that it did kind of change things I did in the ending was that during that gap, my grandmother died. And so I wanted to have a kind of, I don't know, maybe an homage kind of to her in there. Because I did base his grandma very much on my own. And I thought that once I worked through, like, what would I do? Like, if I actually had the ring, what would I do with that? And the first one is there's a big chapter on baseball. So that's, if you read it, the baseball chapter, that's the answer to my question. What would I do with the ring? The baseball thing.
Right.
And then I'd want to see my grandma again.
Yeah.
So those are the big things that changed.
What is next for you? Is this a one and done, I will never write again, I put the computer away kind of event? Or was this, I now have 5 different ideas for books that I want to write?
It's funny because I'm very good at coming up with writing prompts. I have a lot of ideas. I wouldn't even say Fellow was my best idea, but it had the best chance of actually getting finished. The next book that I want to write is actually about the Civil War. I have a Confederate ancestor who just had a crazy life, and I think it would just be a great story. And I know that's a really spicy subject for a lot of people, but
it happened though. So
I mean,
yeah.
So I think that's the next one. I have an idea for a really long, like, epic type novel, but that's gonna take a long time to write. So it's not really something I'm like, I gotta put that in the front.
I forget who it was. I can't remember the author's name, but wrote a book. Took 10 years for them to get their first book written, and then published it. It was very successful, but sometimes that's the process that's required, I guess. Sean, where can people find the book and follow you and follow along as you get into some of these other projects that you're working on?
So it's on Amazon. That's the only place where you can get it. And I'm on Twitter at Sean Russell Book, and then on Facebook it's just Sean Russell. You look up Sean Russell, you see a guy in a cowboy hat holding his daughter. That's me.
That's the one.
That's the one. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Sean, thank you, man. Appreciate you taking the time to talk and break it down. I firmly believe, this is me, that when we write, speak, act, whatever it is we do, whatever creative outlet that God has given to us and the abilities given to us, it's important for us to have a point, not just to entertain or not just to occupy time, but to actually get to a place where someone can walk away and go, I learned something there. And this is that. So thank you for doing it. Hope you continue to write, and look forward to having you back on when the next book is done and you're talking about that one. So thanks, Sean. Really appreciate it.
We were not made to live in isolation. Sadly, many of our veterans feel they need to fight their battles alone. This self-isolation has led to the staggering statistic of more than 20 veterans taking their lives every day.
A lot of guys end up drinking, a lot of guys end up losing hope. Someone will go to the VA and they'll try to get, prescription medications to help with PTSD. They'll get pills for anxiety, they'll get pills because they can't sleep, now they'll get pills for depression. Before they know it, they're taking 12 different medications. And when it's not working out, these guys lose hope, and that's why there's 23 guys a day committing suicide.
The mission of Mighty Oaks is to eradicate the veteran suicide epidemic and help our warriors change their legacies. As a result, we've been able to help over 4,000 veterans and first responders by equipping them with the tools they need to live the lives they were created to live.
Everything they said just kept hitting me in the heart over and over and over again. It's like all the things that I didn't know that I needed to hear. And I opened my heart to God that week, dude, and I've been a different person ever since.
Our faith-based, peer-to-peer approach has one of the highest success rates of any program available today, offering hope and understanding to those who need it most. We provide our programs and resources, including travel, at no cost to our warriors.
I remember talking to a licensed social worker who actually handed me a pamphlet to Mighty Oaks. So I went, and I'm glad I did.
By aligning their lives to biblical principles, these men and women are able to lead their families, their communities, and our nation. Our mission is to serve and restore our nation's warriors and families who have endured hardship through their service to America, and to help them find new life purpose through hope in Christ. It's your generosity that can make a difference in the lives of the men and women who have fought for our country and our freedoms. Now that they're home, don't let them fight alone. Learn more at mightyoaksprograms.org.
On MyPillow's 20-year anniversary, with over 80 million MyPillows sold, Mike Lindell at MyPillow wants to thank each and every one of you by giving you the lowest price in history on their MyPillows. You will receive a queen-size MyPillow for $19.98. Regular price is $69.98, and just $10 more for a king size. You will receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products, such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, and so much more. This is the time to try out some of their other amazing products you've had your eye on. Go to mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square and use promo code SITREP to receive this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for $19.98. Or call 800-870-0283. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. Go to mypillow.com and use promo code SITREP or call 800-870-0283. Appreciate Sean taking some time to talk to us today. Please go and follow him on social media and then jump over to Amazon. You can find his book there, of course. If you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, please do that right now. Wherever you're listening from, you can subscribe and then take some time to go over to our website, thesitrep.org, thesitrep.org. You can find this episode, of course, and so many other archived episodes from other incredible guests, and we would love for you to do that as well. Thank you for listening today. Look forward to talking to you next time.